Remember, your learning target is I can estimate the measure of an angle and classify it. So this is kind of going to have two parts. We're guessing about how big a measure of an angle is, or if it's given to us, and then we're going to classify it based on that. So we're going to be looking at different angles. You've already classified before, but today we're going to match kind of like a number amount to those angles that we've seen. So there'll be numbers along with pictures. Usually we do this by using something called a protractor. I printed out a giant version of one so you could see it. They're usually not this big, but I printed out a big one so you guys could kind of see that this is how we would hold this up to an angle and then see how big or small it is. If you see my numbers that go on both sides of this, and then 90 is right in the middle, because remember that makes a right angle. So I'd line up the bottom here and measure up like this, or the other way and match it right here. So then I can also look at maybe acute angles and what number they would be. Like this would be 40 if it lined up like this, if this was the bottom of my angle. If I had an obtuse angle that went over here, it'd be like 140 if it lined up with this marking right there. Like I said, you guys don't have these protractors at home with you right now, but I want you to know what it looks like so you can kind of imagine when I'm talking about these numbers, how you would measure them. All right, we're gonna tie this into what you guys learned on the last video, kind of about those fractional parts of a circle. So I can think of how these tie together when I think about that circle as well. If I went 1/4 of the way from a circle, and if I just looked at that part, it would look like this. If I imagine that circle being gone, it looks like just a regular angle in there, and that would be 90 degrees. I kind of think of that in my head as a place to always start with. Like, is it 90 degrees or is it bigger or smaller than 90 degrees? Another one that's a good example to kind of think about in our head whenever we're doing this estimating or classifying of these angles is a straight angle. So that would be like if I did a half turn in my circle, this is called 180 degrees. If you remember, that's kind of like a straight angle that Miss Hills had taught you in that past video that should be in your notes. Okay. So now that I know that this would be a straight angle, 180, no matter which direction it goes, as long as that angle is straight. And if I have a corner, no matter which direction, that it's 90 degrees, we can now start thinking about all the angles that would fit in between those two. So, for example, if I had an angle that was 127 degrees, I can look at the picture and now I can look at that number 2 and think, is it acute, right, straight, or obtuse? So I'm taking that measurement, 120, and deciding that it would be an obtuse angle because it's bigger than 90 and less than 180. One thing I forgot to mention is when we measure angles, it's in degrees. And that's what this little tiny circle is right here. You would have also seen this probably when you're talking about weather, like the temperature. You also call that degrees, and it uses the same little symbol. But for some reason, we use it with angles too, not to tell how hot or cold they are, but to tell how small or big they are. Another one that you might see, remember angles can be in any different shape, is one like this. I would look in between this angle and see that it's smaller than 90 degrees. This one, the measurement they gave us is 37. So based on this 37 degree and the picture that I have, I can tell that this is an acute angle. So I'm using that measurement, the picture, and what I know about classifying angles in order to do this. It's kind of like multiple parts that we've already learned coming together. All of this stuff keeps building on each other. So remember what you learned from the week before. All right, we are going to do a few practice ones. So get your notes ready so you can look at them and test yourself to see if you can guess the correct measurement and classification. I do want you to remember that in your notes, you should have something probably next to some notes that maybe Miss Hills took with you, that acute angles are anywhere between 1 and 89 degrees. Once I hit that 90-degree mark straight up and down, that automatically makes it a right angle. As soon as I get any bigger than that 90 degrees, so 91 to 179, I have an obtuse angle. And when I get all the way to that straight line, it hits 180 degrees, and then I know it is straight. Let's look at this first example for us to start thinking about. So, remember, I have to estimate a measure and I have to classify this. It might be easier, since we have classified before, to classify it first. So I want you to think in your head, is this acute, right, straight, or obtuse? And when I look at this, I notice that it is acute. I kind of do this by imagining a line that would be at 90 degrees, because that's kind of something I can picture is like a perfect square corner. So this is the imaginary line that I thought about in my head, and I realized that this line that's part of the angle is smaller. It doesn't go past that, it's smaller than that line. So I automatically know that a 90-degree angle is the right angle. So I'm going to put 90 degrees in there. Since I know it's smaller than that, would it be smart to guess a number bigger or smaller as the degrees? It'd be wise to choose one that is smaller. So when I look in here, I think, wow, that looks about halfway between 0 and 90 degrees. So when I make a guess for this, I'm going to say 45 degrees. Now, I might not be exactly right with 45, but I know that my guess or my estimate makes sense because I have a justification that it is smaller than 90 and it's about halfway between. If it was way down here, I'd have to guess a number closer to 1. And if it was way up here, I'd have to guess a number closer to 90. But since it's about halfway between, I think that 45 degrees is a good estimate for this angle measurement. Let's look at another one. So, if I have an angle that looks like this, you don't have to, but I again imagine if I was at 90 degrees, like a perfect square corner, this is probably where that line would be. Now, one thing that I notice is this one seems to go past that 90-degree mark. So I know that my estimate for this angle has to be larger than 90 degrees because this angle goes past it. So when I start thinking, well, if it went all the way to here, it'd be 180 degrees because that's a straight angle. So I have to decide, is this line right here part of my angle? Is it closer to 180 degrees down here, or is it closer to 90? Or like on our last one, is it about halfway in between? I think that this one's a little bit closer to 90 than it is to 180 degrees if I imagine it going all the way flat. So I'm going to make a guess of about 110 degrees. Now again, I might not be exactly right with 110, but I know that it is a logical estimate because I can justify my reason why I chose it. I chose it because it's larger than 90. And I know that based on what I know about right angles. And I know that it's not super close to 180, so it would need to be a number that is smaller than that. Also, looking at this, since I know it's bigger than 90 degrees, I would classify this angle as an obtuse angle. So when you take a look at these, I can make those guesses, but I have to kind of use what I already know about angles to make those guesses. Last part of this is on your assignment, they're going to put some of these angles inside of circles, and you're going to have to determine based on their measure what type of angle they are. Some of the things on your assignments are going to give you an angle and a measurement, and you're going to have to decide how you would classify it. Another thing that you are going to have, the third part on your assignment, is actually angles inside of triangles. Now, you all have classified triangles as well, and one thing that's nice about that is angles and triangles are classified in very similar ways. I can use acute triangle, right triangle, or obtuse triangle to classify them just like I can with angles. So let's practice a few with the angles inside of a triangle. If I look at this, I can use the picture again, but now I also have extra help because I know about degrees. So these 2 degrees are both 45, and this blue square tells me something special about this one. It tells me that that degree is it's a right angle, which means that degree in there is 90. So now that I know that this is exactly 90 degrees, I classify triangles on about their special angle. So the only one that's different in this case is a right angle here. So even though these 2 are acute, this is the special angle that's not acute, which means this would be classified as a right triangle. If I look at another triangle here, again, I have a picture now, but I also have degrees to help me figure this out. I see 1 degree is 120. I have a 40-degree angle and a 20-degree angle. If I look at each of these, I know something about these numbers now. I can look at this angle and know, or I can look at the number. When I know 40, that number is less than 90, so this is an acute angle. When I look at 120, 120 is larger than 180 and less than 90. So that means this angle is obtuse. If I look at this angle over here, it's 20, and I know that 20 is less than 90 and larger than 1, so this one is an acute angle. If I have 2 acute angles and 1 obtuse angle, I want you to think about what way I would classify this triangle. I classify it by its special angle, the one that is larger than 90, and so this is an obtuse triangle. And one last triangle before I let you go. If I look here, I see 40, 70, and 70. Now, all 3 of these angles are less than the number 90. So since I have all 3 angles that are less than 90, I know all of those angles in this triangle are acute. So if I look at this, since I have 3 acute angles, that automatically makes this triangle an acute triangle. And I know that because not only do I have pictures of these little angles inside here, they also gave me the degrees. So now you have an extra tool in your toolbox. If you see numbers next to those angles, that tells you what type of angle it is and can help you classify it.